Welcome everyone to Beer, Bourbon, and Games. I'm your host Chris, and today on the channel we have an interview for you. We're going to travel to Mellow Mink Brewing. We're going to sit down with the two owners, Matt and Cole, and we're going to talk to them about their sour beer program, their barrel program, and a few other cool things. So hopefully you'll sit back, grab a beer, and just enjoy the interview. Now, if you are new to the channel, I am going to say welcome to the channel. I'm glad that you found me. As always, make sure to leave a like and a comment down below. Everything does help me, but without further ado, let's roll the interview. I just want to first start by thanking both of you for sitting down with me and taking time out of your day. I know you guys are probably extremely busy with everything you're doing, but I just want to start here with a really simple one. Can you guys tell me a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. My name is Matt. I'm co-owner and head brewer. I started home brewing back in 2009, and within the first year or two got pretty into sour beers. I was drinking a lot of Belgian imports at the time and fascinated with that. So I started trying to learn how to make those on my own, experimenting with different types of souring processes, and a couple years later started writing a blog called Sour Beer Blog that was focused on brewing techniques and primarily souring brewing techniques, and from that kind of decided that it might be worth taking the leap into professional brewing.
And I'm Cole. I handle the social media, and I'm also a bartender here as well. I just kind of developed a passion for the hospitality industry after he came to me and wanted to, had discussed wanting to open a brewery, and it just stemmed from there, especially for me with the beer and cocktails.
Did you have a past in hospitality at all?
So I was a dental assistant, and I think that's where just helping people and also juggling different tasks, and it kind of stemmed from there into what I learned through that job.
You mentioned you had a blog. Do you still have that active?
I maintain it. Most of the articles on there are educational. I haven't written anything new for it in the last 2 years. Although I do think I would like to, from time to time, jump back in and put a new, piece out on it. It's not like a topical blog. It more is more technical.
The next one I have here for you, my wife even asked me, I don't know, what is the history behind the name Mellow Mink? How did that name come to be? And were there any other names that you guys had chosen and kind of battled through, or was it always just Mellow Mink?
So it wasn't always Mellow Mink. We had really liked is we liked the idea of incorporating an animal into the brewery name. Initially it started out with a fox. We thought PA mammals and just sort of different animals that we were interested in using that would look good in especially a logo, and a fox came to mind. However, it is also pretty widely used. So we started thinking about things, and we're just sitting at home, and we actually just pulled up Wikipedia and looked down a list, and we saw mink, and we're like, oh, okay, well, mink kind of has, especially with fur, like luxury goods, you think furs, and we're like, beer kind of has become this like affordable luxury is the way we like to think about it, especially craft beer, because there's beer trading, there's different bottle sales that goes on, and different things. So for us, it kind of thought, oh, okay, well that ties in with the mink being traditionally thought of as this luxury product for furs, and then with beer, and then we wanted some alliteration and as well as an adjective to describe us, and we thought, what's an M name or an M word we can use, and mellow is what came to mind. So Mellow Mink.
The tap room definitely fits that kind of look you were going for, that kind of upscale. It definitely feels kind of like a boutique in here. It's very nice. This is honestly probably one of the nicest tap rooms I've ever been in. I love the look of it.
Well, thank you.
I wanted to mention here, it wasn't an original question on here, but I noticed when I was walking around the barrels you guys have over there. And do you can you talk a little bit about like the barreling program that you guys have going on?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my passions here, and something that we wanted to build in from the beginning of kind of designing our brewing program. So our barrels are all used wine barrels, French oak. Right now, back there we have a dozen used Cabernet Sauvignon and a dozen used Chardonnay barrels. And in those we will place varying styles of sour beer, mixed culture beer that can age and develop over time, and then we will pull and blend those for our bottle program.
Okay. I did see right now you've got the Scarlet Sunrise over there. That one says it's got a different blend of berries in there.
Yeah, so that beer was sour red ale aged in Cabernet Sauvignon and sour blonde ale aged in Cabernet Sauvignon. They both had, that bottle was blended at the end of last year, but the beer that went into the blend was already about a year old at the time. Okay. So we had pulled beer that had about a year of oak time, and then we conditioned it on blueberries and blackberries.
Okay.
And that's a fairly traditional Flanders red base style, and then it was the fruits work well with it because the Flanders red style is a very vinous wine-like beer to begin with. So fruits that can kind of enhance that wine profile work really well with that style.
Since it's in there for a year, does it have a nice tannin profile?
Yeah, so you'll get tannin from the oak, some vanilla from the oak. It picks some tannin up from the skins of the fruit as well.
Do you get the barrels all from the same place?
We get them through a barrel broker.
Okay.
So they come from different vineyards. Most of them had been in use for wine for several years. They have a fairly low to medium oak profile on most of them. I mean, they won't add the kind of whiskey profile that like a fresh bourbon barrel is going to add, but because of the extended aging time, that's exactly what we're looking for. We're making blends right now that have been with some of the beers have been in barrel for 20 to 24 months. So the fact that they got several years of wine use before we get them actually helps mellow that oak down to the point where the beer can age and condition and develop its signature characters through those mixed fermentation organisms without becoming just an oak bomb.
Yeah. The next one you kind of touched on a little bit here, but your passion is definitely sour beers. You don't see that very often. Right now the market is definitely leaning more IPA, so you can go pretty much anywhere and get an IPA beer, but it's very nice to actually come here and get a refreshing sour. Can you tell me a little bit about your love for that beer style and kind of how it developed?
Yeah, absolutely. I when I got out of college, which was like 07, even before I started home brewing, I was doing quite a bit of drinking imports, European import beers, things like that. And my first sour beer was a Belgian goose made by Hansen's Artisanal. And it's just totally different from everything else I was drinking at the time. It was funky, it was sour, it was, I think it was an acquired taste to some degree, for sure. But it kind of sparked this part of my palate that, even as a child, like I was one of those kids that always had like a warhead in his mouth, or these goose baby, like goose, whatever, the different like sour gums and just sour candies in general. Yeah, I always liked that flavor profile. So when I started tasting that in beer, it just fascinated me. So for a couple of years, I was doing everything I can to get my hands on some of these Belgian imports because there weren't a lot of readily available U.S. sours at the time. And once I was into home brewing, then it really was starting to connect the pieces of like how do they actually make these things? And even at that time, back in before 2010, there was a lot of like mystery and lore steeped around how are these beers actually made. In the last decade, there's been a ton of research, a ton more focus, and we're starting to understand a lot more like the complexities and the processes that actually do produce these flavor profiles. But I remember as an early home brewer, it was like there were message boards where people were just trying to guess what was going on, where do the flavors come from, and things like that. And if someone actually would get the chance to travel to Belgium and like talk to a lambic brewer, they were always peppering them with questions, like trying to like learn the secrets. So that's where the initial like passion of it came from. It's just this like there was this mystery and this really cool flavor profile. So you know, a couple years go by, I'm starting to learn how to do some of these things on my own, and it just kind of kept building from there.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the sour brewing process? How does it differ from the normal brewing?
Yeah, so the big difference between a sour brewing and a non-sour brewing process is typically the organisms that are involved in one way or another. And there are multiple ways to create sour beer. You can use multiple different organisms can be involved, but the main difference is like a classic ale or lager is brewed with just yeast of some strain, and the average sour beer is made with both yeast and bacteria. There are always exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, sour beer is a mix. We say like mixed culture because there's multiple organisms involved. Much the way a lot of sour foods are made. So things like Greek yogurt, sauerkraut, those products are all made using multiple organisms that do the fermentation, create the acidity, and that's very similar in beer. In fact, one of the major sour producing, acid producing organisms in beer is also found in Greek yogurt, and a variety of kind of fermented, pickled sour products.
Does it take longer for a beer to ferment when it's a sour? Does it take longer to produce?
So it can, but it doesn't have to. One of the things that I was kind of involved with, especially early on, was Sour Beer Blog, and it has become a real industry standard at this point, is the concept of like kettle souring or fast souring. So we've figured out how to kind of split these organisms up, use them at the right times and the right proportions, and you can create a draft sour beer that is ready to go in about the same time frame as a standard ale. Lagers take longer in general, but as a standard ale. But there is always some degree of trade-off. As a brewer, I'm thinking about how to build complexity into a beer. And if you make a beer sour quickly, the organisms are not providing complexity. So typically we want to build that complexity in with other ingredients, fruit additions, spice additions, things like that, to kind of round out and give you that like full profile of something that's like dynamic and enjoyable, and not one note. On the other hand, if the organisms, usually more organisms involved, and they have a much longer time to act, they may take 6 months, 9 months to fully sour a beer. And over that period of time, you're also developing a lot of nuanced flavors that are not present in a fast sour beer. And in that case, you may create a simple blonde ale that has like 2 malts in it and little to no hops, but it has this whole varied list of flavor profiles because of that long fermentation. If you took that same recipe and made a fast sour beer with it, and you didn't add anything else to it, it would be very basic, simple would be the best term to describe it. Not bad, but not complex.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I know the term, like I've heard kettle sours and all that stuff. It wasn't until maybe a year ago that I started drinking sours. I wasn't really big into them. For some reason, my palate didn't agree with them. I was never a sour lover as a kid like you were with everything. But then I went to Trogs one day and I had their boysenberry sour. And that was like the gateway. It was really weird. All of a sudden now, like every sour I find, I haven't found one that I don't like. So it's really cool to find a place like you. When I came up here, since I had never been before, I told Cheyenne to just give me one of everything. That was a great day. Every single one of those beers was great. It was like a rainbow of colors. Was Joe the one that made the pecan pie one? Was
Yep.
he? That was fantastic. That was probably the standout of the day. But that was incredible. So I want to ask you guys, not including your own beers, what's your favorite sour beer?
My favorite is it's hard for me to pick a favorite, but if I had to narrow one down, I'd say it's a brewery in Belgium called Dre Fontaine, and they make just some of the world's best. The goose is the style, and that's a spontaneous product, very sour, very funky, but also just very unique. And you could pick another half a dozen lambic breweries, and I would also say they're basically tied for that like top spot. But my favorite beers in general would be lambic gooses and fruited lambics.
And what about you?
I was going to say Cantillon. Like, he had listed a number of Belgian breweries that seem to be, I would say, tied for that top contender or top spot. They're just all around a great brewery.
I have to look for more of those. I know you don't really see too many still around. The place that I go only has a few of the import stuff. The one with the elephants, the one that I've had the most of. Is it Delirium?
Delirium.
Yeah, I've had them. And what's the other one? Is there Trappist?
Trappist is a term for beer that are brewed by like monks in like these monastery type breweries. So there's about a half a dozen producers that are making Trappist beer, but they're typically all of these like Belgian Golden Strong, Belgian triples, quads. They're in those styles.
I did not know that. The only thing I've ever heard of with monks, I don't know if you guys watch Netflix at all, but there was a beer.
Brews Brothers.
Brews Brothers, yeah, with the monks. How do I get the truffles in? When did you guys decide fully that you wanted to open the brewery up?
We were contemplating as early as 2015. It was the very end of 2016 that we went ahead and registered a corporation and started planning in earnest. And from that point forward, it was sort of a combo of planning, advertising, and just trying to get everything in a row to make it happen. It was at least 2 years. We opened. It was almost exactly 2 years. We opened to the public in end of August 2018. So I'd say there was about 2 years of like, this would be neat, let's think about it. And then there was about 2 years of no turning back now. How do we make this happen?
2017 is when we began filing paperwork. So there's a lot, like for our established date, that's when we tend to use 2017 as the marker. While we weren't open to the public, it's where we had filed for like a business license and a brewery license.
Yeah. We had decided on a name. We were making merchandise and like trying to, just get people ready for the idea that this was going to exist.
I felt confident in like the idea of the brand we had developed by that point. And so 2017 is really where it started to come together much more so.
Did you guys run into any issues when you were opening it up?
Sure.
I think time frame was a big one. Just different expectations and how quickly you think things will move along, and there's a lot of waiting on others to kind of catch up. That was one of the main things, I think.
Yeah, I would equate it to, so my father growing up, he was a residential contractor building houses, so there was a lot of, his job was organizing a lot of people to do their jobs and also filling all the gaps in between.
Okay.
That's very similar to the idea of opening a brewery. You're trying to organize a lot of different people who have to do their components, legal, construction, equipment production, just to name a few, and you're trying to organize them into like a logical like time frame, and then you're filling all the gaps in between to make sure that they have what they need to do their piece, they actually get their piece done, and the next person's ready to come in after that. And it's, you know, it's a combination of working with private contractors, working with local government, and there's a number of pieces in play for sure.
What is the plan for you guys moving forward? I know right now I saw on social media you guys are going to start canning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you buy a can line? Are you doing mobile canning?
We bought a canning line. It has arrived at our Harrisburg freight, station, and it's getting delivered later this week, barring the fact that we might get an enormous snowstorm. So we're not sure. We'll see what day exactly it shows up, but. Small canning line, we're a small operation in general. This is a 5-barrel system, so just for people that aren't familiar with like the barrel, scaling, if you think of a big commercial keg, that's half a barrel. So when we brew a batch of beer, it's like 10 kegs worth of beer usually. So we got a small canning line that's able to work with those scales of beer without a ton of waste. And our goal with the canning is to primarily sell 4-packs out of the tap room. We are not and never have been focused on any type of distribution, simply because isn't really part of our concept. It's not really what we're looking to do.
We like to think of ourselves as a boutique brewery where we enjoy being smaller.
I like being very hands-on, small batches, being able to brew a lot of things that rotate frequently and be really connected to the local community. So the whole point of canning is not to necessarily grow our footprint in terms of having beer in Philly and Pittsburgh, that type of thing, but it's really to be able to just give our local clientele more options for ways to enjoy our beer at home, things like that.
I've heard similar from a lot of breweries. A lot of people just really want to make sure that everyone's getting the best experience they can with the beer. I definitely respect that thinking. It's a very good philosophy to have overall. And thinking here when you said boutique, do you guys watch Schitt's Creek at all?
Yes.
I'm just thinking this is
Watch the whole
David's
thing.
store. I love David.
Well, that's a huge compliment, so thank you. Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of that show. I actually just finished season 6.
David is my favorite TV character of all time. I love him.
There definitely are watching them two together. There's definitely some similarities where it feels like that quite a bit.
Yeah, that show it's so relatable and wholesome.
Yes.
Yet, I love that show. Sorry about tangents, but
No,
the boutique, it just
finished
really
last week, and it definitely. I thought that to myself watching it.
I love that store. But yeah, you definitely pulled off the unique look in here. I like that you've created the destination here. It's a good thing to have, good concept.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see you guys just get some cans out there. Maybe someone brings a 4-pack somewhere and then introduce someone to sours, and they'll come in here for more. So that's a good way to kind of locally draw a lot more attention.
That's our goal.
You answered it a little bit. You've got a 5-barrel system. Can you tell everyone just a little bit about your brewing system overall?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how technical I should go, but I'll just sort of.
You can.
I'll just run in the middle of the road, I think, with it is. So our system is locally built. Is actually made by a equipment fabricator that's based right outside of Harrisburg called Osage. Met them through other brewery contacts, and they built us a 5-barrel steam-fired system. which was something that I was really pretty happy about. A lot of steam-fired systems are larger systems, but it's one of the nicer ways to be able to basically bring beer to a boil without the risk of scorching it and without using direct fire propane, which can be harder on the beer in general. But regardless of that, it's a 5-barrel system, and that's our kind of scale footprint. So we will move from we have a 3-vessel system, basically HLT hot liquor tank, which heats water. We have a mashed water tun, so we're mixing the crushed grain with the water in that vessel. It also has a false bottom built right in, so at the end of the mash, we're able to drain that wort off, pump it over to the boil kettle, bring up to the boil. That's typically the first place in the process where like hops would go in, sometimes spices and other ingredients go in there as well. And then when it's done, it's being cooled down and moved into a fermenter, and yeast gets added at that point. We're doing our fermentation there. If it is a kettle soured beer, the souring would occur in the kettle before it goes to the fermenter. If it's a mixed culture beer, it will go just straight to a fermenter, and then we're adding everything in there. We do have bright tanks, which are basically conditioning and carbonating tanks. So we can be kind of working on fermentation and conditioning simultaneously. Different batches can be in both places at once. And we also serve off of bright tanks. So we have a walk-in cooler with 8 serving tanks inside that are 5 barrels apiece. So we're able to keep up to 8 full batches on draft at any given time. We have 12 tap lines total, so we have a couple of lines that are just for small batches, guest beers, things like that. But it's all fairly small footprint in terms of the brewery, and you're just thinking about moving liquid from like one place to another. But it's also a nice system for keeping beer fresh, keeping oxygen out of the process, and it works well for us.
How many fermenters do you have?
3 fermenters, 2 brights that are all like temperature controlled, and then we also have a 10-barrel like double-sized non-temperature controlled square tank, and we'll use that typically for mixed culture beers that are going to go into barrel. Most of the beer that is in barrels will spend about a month doing an initial mixed culture fermentation in stainless. And then it gets pumped into the barrel once the bulk of the alcohol fermentation is complete. I'm sure you've been into breweries and seen like tanks blowing off like a ton of CO2 or maybe even yeast coming out of those blow-off lines. We don't want that happening in the tap room right behind us. So that really active part of the fermentation takes place in the back in stainless. And then once the beer is much more stable and ready to just condition and age, then we'll move that into the barrels.
Okay. You mentioned that you do like small batches. I see there's some on here. Since you have the 5-barrel, do you have like a smaller, like a 3.5 barrel?
We have a small pilot system that we can do small batches on, and we also can do. Sometimes we'll take a beer that's early in its like fermentation process, and we'll split a portion of it off into smaller fermenters, like homebrew size fermenters, and then add ingredients to that, and kind of take one beer and diversify it into several different products.
Okay. That makes sense. I was just curious, since the 5-barrel is not extremely huge to begin with, how small the small batches were.
Our smallest small batches are 5 gallons. So that's like the size.
So that's a homebrew
like a homebrew size, yeah.
Brewing out of a bucket.
We have some equipment that we can do like 15-gallon small batches, and we can do up to 1 barrel in a small batch with one of our tanks. We also have a couple of 1.5 barrel non-temperature controlled fermenters that are used for primarily mixed culture things, but it's all we try to have, like I talked about the main 5-barrel system, but we have a lot of little smaller options for being able to do just small beers that are like, cool experimental things that are going to rotate quickly.
Okay. One thing I just thought of when you're talking about brewing, with normal brewing, you always lose a little bit of your yield overall. Do you lose more in a sour because of the yeast and the bacteria, or is it pretty similar?
It's pretty similar.
Okay, I was just curious about that whole.
The number one beer you lose a lot of volume in is actually IPAs.
Okay.
The hops, the sheer volume of hops they're adding means that at the end you're going to have like this layer of beer that you can draw off of, and then you're going to have a huge layer of just sludge that is hops and beer mixed together. And that's the number one thing that for us cuts down on yield volume is like our New England IPAs are getting just these enormous dry hop additions, and they'll lose 25% loss is not uncommon.
Okay.
On those, but sour beers and other types of ales, maybe 10% loss is more average.
Oh, that's not bad. What is your favorite hop to use?
I'm pretty equal opportunity when it comes to hops. I will say there's one that just came onto the market recently that doesn't even have like a brand name yet.
Is it just like the numbers?
Yep, it's called HBC 586. I believe it's out of the Oregon hop breeding program, and it's pretty cool. It's very tropical, very aromatic. We've been playing around with that quite a bit in some of our more recent New Englands.
Interesting, cool. Yeah, they're constantly making new ones. This one is going to be kind of just about your brewing philosophy. How has your philosophy on brewing changed from maybe when you first started home brewing to now where you are right now?
I'd like to say that it hasn't actually changed very much. I think my philosophy has always been that the brewing process is a journey, not just a destination. Thinking back to like learning about how Belgian beers are made and lambic specifically, it's all about blending and creating the best final product that you can out of the set of inputs that you have. And I apply that philosophy to all varieties of beer. You know, I'm tasting the product at different stages, during fermentation, after fermentation, you know, before conditioning and after conditioning and things like that. And I see it as, I think when I first started home brewing, I had a recipe and a set of processes. I did that, and at the end I tasted the result. And if I was happy with it, great. If not, I would have to think about what to change along the way. But I'd say in the middle of my like homebrewing career, I started thinking much more about like quality control as something that goes into every step of the process. So I know here, and this is kind of just what I think evolved to is I'm tasting the wort. I'm tasting the beer when it's got maybe 25% of its fermentation left to go. I'm tasting it when it's pretty much done fermenting. I'm tasting it after it carbonates, and then I'm finally tasting it at the draft line. And up until the point where it hits the draft line, there are adjustments that can be made, you know, and the further along you get, maybe the fewer things you can do to steer beer in a certain direction, but that's always been my kind of philosophy. And if a beer wouldn't be what I'm looking for it to be at a step in the process, I can make adjustments to temperature, make adjustments to other processes, add some ingredient, or even blend it with another beer to make it into what I'm ultimately looking for as a final product. And there's also the idea that if something is just radically off the track, it might go down the drain. That's something, you know, it's liquid and it does funny things sometimes, and sometimes the best place for it to go is just down the drain, and that I would much rather have it go there than into a glass that someone's not going to be happy with. So.
Very good. Yeah, I like to hear that. It's that's a good thing because I know there's. I hope that everyone has that same philosophy that they want to pour it. You don't want to serve someone something that you're not proud of because it could be their first and last drink they ever have here, and they're not going to come back. If it's not on brand, it's not worth serving and messing up that because unfortunately nowadays the internet can make or ruin someone in a heartbeat. No one ever calls the electric company and says, hey, thanks for the electricity. They only call and complain when something's broken. So always try to put out your best products. I'm glad to hear that you do that. This one has affected everyone, unfortunately. How has COVID affected your year so far? It's almost been a full year. I know you're doing the canning line. I'm assuming that's probably earlier than you originally wanted to, maybe, possibly, but with limited sales, it might be kind of a reactionary thing, but necessary.
I'll just keep it to the positives. I think is maybe the best thing to talk about. It's affected everyone, and I think that it's created a lot of challenges and a lot of struggles, and I feel bad for those of us who haven't made it through. But the future is pretty uncertain for just about everybody right now. So we're doing our best to kind of rise to the challenge of new ways to help people access the product. Before COVID, I would say that 90% of our product was drank in-house out of a glass. After, it's more than 50% is to go, even when we are able to be open to the public, and when we're not able to be open to the public, it's 100% to go. So it's created new challenges. I think it's also helped us to diversify the number of options that people have to enjoy our beer, which in the long run is a positive thing. We didn't have a crowler machine before the initial wave of shutdowns. That's been a big boost for us in terms of people getting to enjoy more of our product to go. And we're hoping that the canning line is similar in the effect that it just gives people more options and they can choose exactly how and when to enjoy our beer.
It's forced us to pivot, and I think that's a really positive thing because we've been able to get out of our comfort zone and try to be more adaptable. It definitely makes you push your mental capacity and where can you take the business and what can you offer to the consumer. It's also helped us just kind of try to keep learning what they want and listen and make sure you are listening to them, because you want to be able to stay afloat while providing the best experience possible so that we all can win.
It's true. I'm glad that you guys are doing well enough that you can continue and give people that option. I will gladly be taking stuff home with me then. I'll buy whatever I can to support you guys. Hope more and more people come in as well. This one's going to be for anyone that is looking to start a brewery, looking to become a home brewer. What advice would you have for someone looking to do either of those things?
I would say that if you're looking to become a home brewer, there's never been a better time to learn how to become a fantastic brewer. The amount of when I started home brewing back in 2009, there were a couple of podcasts, a couple of videos online, a lot of books. That number of resources has exploded since then. Not only do you have a wide variety of YouTube channels, podcasts, websites, you've also got a lot more small craft brewers like us that are happy to talk to local home brewers and things like that. While this has been derailed a bit by gathering capacity limitations and different things that are COVID mitigation steps. We were holding every other Wednesday homebrewer meetings here. Local homebrewers, non-club affiliated, could come in, bring beers to share, ask questions. I sat in on all of them to help give like a kind of a pro viewpoint on things, but also homebrewers learn from other homebrewers. There's a pretty thriving community out there if you go to look for it.
I'm glad to hear that. There's, no matter where I go, it seems that every single little pocket has a really receptive brewery out there where they'll help each other. Do you still homebrew at all? Like for competitions just on the side?
I haven't. Not since brewing here. And I think my biggest thing with that is there's a lot of really cool homebrewing on the equipment on the market, and my home system wasn't without some bells and whistles. But frankly, I have more bells and whistles on my professional system. It's easier and more, I think, enjoyable to brew on this system than it was on my homebrew system. So I just do that.
You've graduated to the big boy toys.
I enjoy the big boy toys.
Is there anything left that you guys want to tell the people? Anything coming up? Events are probably out of the picture for the time being, but anything coming up? Any interesting beers?
We've always got new stuff coming out, especially with our small batch program. We've got beers coming out on a weekly basis. They'll be out for a couple days to a week, and then
about the barrel program.
We've got new stuff rotating all the time in terms of things that you can come in and take home with you and try new flavors. Our barrel program is still alive and well. We're blending currently for our existing Founders Club, which was something we started when we opened the brewery. But we have reached the point where that initial club is ending and we're starting a new club. And that will actually go on sale to the public this Friday.
Okay.
We just finished posting the full details of it online. It's kind of a preview. And that's something that if you like barrel-aged sour beers, if you're into those kind of complex, sort of limited exclusive releases, there's something in the club for you. It also comes with some discounts on growlers, 4-packs, growler fills, things like that. And we're just trying to build, we've got a lot of people that we know are loyal fans of Mellow Mink, and we're just trying to create an even better experience for them and build a local community that can really take advantage of everything we have to offer.
Is there a limited number of available spots for the Founders Club?
There is. We're intending to cap it at 200. That's a production capacity number that we've arrived to based on how much beer can we age at a time, how many blends can we make, and we think that number will allow us to kind of keep things very very fresh, innovative, and make the best possible barrel-aged beer for the club.
Okay. And how much does that cost?
$200 membership.
Okay.
That does include 8 bottles of beer. It also includes some pretty cool custom merch that comes with it, and it comes with discounts that you can use an unlimited amount on to-go beer here off the draft system. So we think we build a lot of value into that membership fee.
Okay. And that's a 1 year or?
It's a 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you get it, it's a 2021 club membership. So all the discounts and things go into effect immediately. They will last until the end of 2021, or for a year after your membership joining if they would buy it at some point in 2021. So they get at least a year of all that, and then through that time period they'll also receive their bottles and merchandise and other swag benefits.
I do like the merchandise. Who designs the stuff?
That's a joint effort.
Yeah, it's collaborative.
You guys do it?
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
We try and do as much in-house as possible, including logos, graphic design, even like on our t-shirts. We did not design, though. That's the one thing we did not design. However, it is a close friend of ours that is is the artist for those. But when it comes to things like growlers, glass art, label art, that's all between he and I.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really well done. I like the stuff over there. So
Thank you.
I'm going to pick up a shirt because I feel bad I don't have one yet. I'm going to get that red, white, and blue one. But I want to thank both of you guys for sitting down with me, taking some time, learning your process, learning about sour beers.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you for
including us.
giving us the opportunity to talk to you, and we appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that interview. I had a blast sitting down with them. They have absolutely incredible beer. So if you are close to the area, I highly recommend going ahead and checking them out. They have some great stuff on tap right now, and they always have some really cool small batch sours and some stuff that you are not going to find anywhere else. They really are a destination brewery. There's nothing quite like them. Their sour program is second to none. I do love the stuff that they are putting out. When you do, go ahead and tell them that Beer, Bourbon, and Games sent you. Until next time, guys, I'll catch you back on the next episode.